Live. And then let me spotlight. Hey, this is Bill Gross, and I'm with EXP in Los Angeles, California, and I am the head of the Probate Group, our national mastermind on probate real estate. And I'm really excited really privileged, honored, excited. I don't know, there's a million words I could say. I don't want to spend the whole hour to have on here, not just a guy who's been critical in my business, was my first probate coach, and I believe the best resource for probate information on building a business as a real estate agent and an investor, the best in the business. There's a number of programs. This is the only one really that I would recommend from a coaching point of view. Unless you need a California certification, that's a nice thing to have. But with the exception, by far, the best coach on the subject is my original coach, Chad Corbett. So Chad, thank you so much for being on our call today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor. So I'm really proud of where you've come in the space, and that like we've both got our own independent communities, but I'm happy to be part of yours.
Well, I think mine's a subset of yours. I think I'd love to sit down with you sometime and figure out how to make that work better. But I try to feel like I support what you do. I want to give back. You know, I don't know if you know this. When I started, not even 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years in March. I went from management back into production. I had 0 listings, 0 sales, 0 leads. I had a Rolodex of people I knew. I knew real estate, but I didn't know anything about probate, and I'd have a book of business. I started with your program in March of 2019 from scratch, and closed 31 transactions each of the last 2 years, 42 sides, built a nice business, built a nice revenue share within our system, within EXP, which is great also. All based on probate, all following a business plan that I developed while in your Probate Mastery or whatever the prior iteration was. So it's really all because of you. You really launched that. Don Hobbs at EXP got me to niche into probate. You showed me how to execute that program and help give me the space to do that. So I do all that to you. So thank you. And I mean everything to be hopefully supporting what you're trying to accomplish. And I think that's because I know where you come from. So Chad, tell us a little bit, how did you get into real estate and how did you end up in the probate space specifically?
So I got into real estate because I was mad at the FBI. I was recruited to the FBI out of college, and I ended up washing out. They wavered me on a hearing test, and then they went back on their word, offered me a pay raise and a desk job, and I left on principle. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a fencing company that I had started through college, but it was just really, really hard work, and I wasn't using my brain like I wanted to. So I grew up near Snowshoe Mountain Ski Resort in West Virginia, where I'm at now. For those of you who are wondering, I live in a fifth wheel camper, and I'm a nomad. But for right now, I'm back to where I grew up. So I went to work selling resort real estate at Snowshoe. And what I realized is I loved it. Like, it was a people business, and I thought it was a business. But I really had a fun time. Like, I got paid to snowboard and make friends. And in 2007, I kind of saw the writing on the walls. I saw certain leading indicators that I didn't have the economic sense to comprehend. I see the same ones right now, by the way, and we can talk about that. But I knew something was shifting. I just wasn't educated enough in finance to understand what it was. So I moved to East Tennessee, and we developed an indoor water park project in the Smoky Mountains. And the reason I moved is that was investment real estate. Like, we were selling them at retail price was a 12.3 cap, everything included. So I was there until 2008 fully set in on us. And then I managed the closings because I knew my sales career was on hold. Banks wouldn't finance condos. I managed the closings for about $1 billion worth of pre-sold real estate. And then I ended up living in Seattle and then in Kaanapali Beach in Maui. And I was living on the beach in probably the top 3 to 4% of earners in the country or the world. And I just wasn't happy. And that's when I became deliberate about pursuing work that was actually fulfilling. So I built a career, sold $100 million worth of real estate in a few years, was living on a beach, one of the top 25 beaches in the world, according to Condé Nast. And it just wasn't there. There was something missing. So I packed everything into a Connex, sent it to Seattle, got on a motorcycle and disappeared into the Canadian wilderness for 2 months. And that's kind of where, like, this whole thing came from. One moment on a mountaintop one night, I said, it just came to me finally. I had no clue what I was going to do, but I found the courage at 29 years old to smash the reset button and be like, nope, we're going down the wrong path. I don't want to be like those 65-year-old men who absolutely hate their lives, but they're trapped by their own possessions and their own career. I just didn't want that. So I had found the courage to do it. I was out in the woods, and one night I was sitting there watching a trout suck flies off the top of a calm Hartley Lake in British Columbia. And it just came to me so clear. It was like, always help others more than yourself, always net six figures so you can live and give the way you want, and always be able to run it from an iPhone anywhere in the world so you can do this. And that's what got my mind really open. I spent the next 6 or 8 months in national parks all through North America with my father. But I got back and I chose a market where I knew nobody, but it seemed to be a good place where I could build a real estate company. So I started investing. I had three state real estate license at the time. Didn't want a fourth. I was thinking I was going to be an investor. So I started approaching many different lists, absentee, fire codes, evictions, just about everything. And what I found is the people who responded to my general We Buy Houses marketing, most of them had inherited the home or were in the process of inheriting it through the probate process. And I knew nothing about it. So I went to the courthouse. That was my first. And Bill, I really appreciate that you're one of the few people who said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And you learned a ton by doing so. And I went to the courthouse, met with the probate clerk, asked to be treated just like a petitioner and to learn the process. And once I understood it, then I started to see, I was like, well, how many do you file a month? And she's like, about 120. And I'm like, whoa. So I started to deliberately market to the list as an investor, which was a mistake. And I would go in with my investor hat. And then if they flinched at my offer, then I would try to switch to my realtor hat. What I ultimately learned one day, without it just happened in a living room, but what I learned is you just be yourself. Don't be Chad the investor. Don't be Chad the realtor. Don't be Chad the, anything. Don't title yourself. Just be Chad. So a lady called me. Selfishly, I wanted that house because it was a few blocks from where I had chosen to rent. It was a neighborhood I wanted to be in. It was the type of house I wanted. She called sobbing. She had driven it overnight, didn't sleep. Her mother had a stroke, was in a hospital, and they were going to discharge her. And they had no liquidity, no cash. All of her net worth was tied up in the real estate, and she was on a fixed income. So Pam was just at a loss. She found a letter of mine pinned to the refrigerator, one of my general We Buy Houses letters. As it turns out, her father had passed away. His estate was being probated by her mother. Her mother had no long-term care plan, had a stroke. She was stable enough that she didn't need to be in ICU, but she couldn't afford to get into, because she had assets, Medicaid wouldn't pick up her care. So this was the one that changed it all for me. I showed up ready to make an offer and buy that house. And once I looked her in the eyes and kind of understood her situation, I was like, okay, slow down. So that was the first appointment where I was just Chad. So we walked through the house, beautiful antique furniture. She told me the stories about her dad building it in the basement back in the 60s. I could see value there. I could see where I could generate quick cash. I started to look around and see things that I knew I could sell. We got back to the living room, and where I normally would just make a cash offer, and then potentially try to switch to my brokerage hat, I gave her 4 options. And I had done a lot of things, trying different strategies throughout the first 6 months or so that I was investing. So option 1 was a cash offer. I think it was 88,000. And she flinched. You could see that if you guys have ever made an offer that the seller perceived as low, but you knew it was fair, like that physical flinch I saw from her. And I was like, oh, I hate that feeling, but I was like, it's okay. There's another option. So option 2 was we sell it as is, where is. When I got to the home, there was a Remax sign leaned up against it. It had actually been on the market for 12 months with no showings and no offers because it was under marketed and overpriced. It was overpriced for the way it was being marketed. So option 2 is as is, where is on the MLS. I had actually just gotten my license that week. Didn't even have a key, like a e-key or anything. I just hung it with a broker days prior. So I offered her the brokerage option. Option 3 was we sell the personal property, do a light cosmetic rehab with the money we got from the personal property, and then take it out as a retail listing, and get the highest price on retail price. And then option 4 was everything in option 3, but using creative financing. I had built a list of qualified tenant buyers off of Craigslist, put them through a full mortgage application with my mortgage banker, and they were ready. They were in the mindset to buy a home. They just couldn't get financing. So she lit up with that. So I was able to, in 3 days, I was able to generate, I think we got 5 grand out of the furniture. We took the five, or maybe we got 10 grand out of it. We took five, put into basically fixtures, paint, landscaping, just a quick cosmetic rehab that made the home look more up to date. And we got the personal property out of it. And then I was able to, I had 4 tenant buyers fighting over it off my list. 3 of those, one I actually put in it. They were retired Navy veterans who had forgotten to pay a power bill, and they just couldn't get qualified for financing because of that one late payment. The other 3 were marginal. And I'm like, guys, listen, I'm pretty sure I can get you qualified. So I got the other 3 qualified as conventional buyers, sold them all 3 a home as a buyer's agent. And I got Pam an $8,000 option payment. We sold for full price, no contingencies, on a VA loan. We pre-inspected it. I was nervous as heck about that because, VA appraisals are, sometimes rocky. But by the way, I learned you can actually do a VA appraisal now and close 2 years later. That actually worked. So anyways, I went through the process, we ended up putting, several $1,000s in her. I think she ended up with like $11,000 cash, which was enough to get her mom out of ICU, out of the hospital, into a rehab facility.
Oh.
And then we turned it into $1,100 a month in rental income. And that gave us enough time that she was able to access other cash to until we got it closed. It took us about 8 months to close that one. For the 6 months leading up to this, I would go home every night and tell myself how unvaluable I was and what an idiot I was and how I was going to fail and, all that negative self-talk. I'm sure you guys, as business people, you've never experienced that. But that night was different. That night I went home and poured a glass of wine, and I'm like, what the hell did you just do? And how can you do it again? And that deal really shaped the rest of my career up to this point. So I started to realize that I needed to get back to focusing on people, because when I went into investing, I was thinking about numbers, houses, commodities, finance. And what I'd lost sight of is what I love so much in resort real estate was people and the stories those people carry with them and the way I can be part of their life and add value to them. And that changed everything for me. So I started with a value first approach. My number one core value is provide value first. Before you ask for anything, you damn well better have helped that person. And I removed all labels. I quit being a realtor. I quit being an investor. I started being Chad. I started speaking in more broad terms, calling myself a probate expert or saying I have a team of probate experts. And then it just became fun and easy. And I got to a point where I was spending $8,000 a month on marketing. And I took that to a point where I was spending less than $1,100 because I just cut all the other lists off and quit marketing to everything and focused on this. And it was the most fun, rewarding business I'd ever had. Like, these people were the most grateful clients I'd ever worked with. And it became and I know that we should always have multiple streams of revenue in our businesses. I had a lot of investor business. So I sold portfolios of rental houses. I still did off-market deals and wholesales. So I had multiple streams, but as far as the revenue stream, I had one, and that was probate. And that was enough to build a team. So in the first year, I did 52 closings, second year, 72, third year, before I went on the road and started traveling, I think we did 100. This isn't counting the off-market stuff. This is just what went through my brokerage. I did, some of the portfolios were 60 and 80 houses. But so anyways, I was doing dozens and dozens and dozens of deals by myself. But because of what I figured out how to build a team around you and delegate most of the work, I could manage it. And eventually I brought on an admin who it was just she and I, but you can easily manage 52 deals a year by yourself being completely ignorant. I'd never sold a house. I sold $100 million worth of real estate between 06 and 11, but never a house. It was all beachfront, ski front, or raw land. So I had to learn everything. I had no clue how to do a residential closing. I didn't know what all these home inspections and all this was about. We didn't do that in the new development world. I didn't realize how easy that job was until I stepped into residential real estate. And I'm like, damn, these people work for their money. So as a complete greenhorn that knew nothing about probate, nothing about conventional real estate, nothing about first-time home buyers or really representing someone selling a primary residence, I was able to do 52 of these in my very first year after figuring it out. And I figured it out in April. So really in 3 quarters, I was able to put that on the board.
Amazing story. And I think the thing about it that really gets me is I'd been in real estate for a long time. I'd been in management. I'd seen other probate programs, and I don't want to disparage anybody, but to me, they always came across as here's an easy way to get business, or because the seller is vulnerable, you can buy the property cheap and flip it. There's nothing wrong with getting it at a low price because you create value, but there is something wrong with approaching somebody and taking advantage of their vulnerability. You're the first person I heard that talked about, and I didn't get in your program hearing this. I was in your program when you talked about this one of the first days of coaching. And I realized this is a whole different ballgame. I can really be of value to people and be an expert and get paid based on the value I create rather than on getting paid on how much value I take from somebody else. And
Yep.
it made the business more enjoyable. It made it more natural. It made it just easier, the whole thing. So you're 100% right. So
And it's on the toughest days, like on those days where you're like, damn, I don't want to make these calls. Like a probate list was the one that would always motivate me through that, because I really believe in my heart these people are better off hearing from the right professional, like someone
Yep.
who does this the right way.
Yep.
They're way better off hearing from that person than not hearing from them, because they're going to there's about a 98% likelihood they're going to sell that house. So I looked at it as my duty to actually connect with these people who needed help the most, because otherwise they were going to work with the damn fools that had a 77% expiration rate on probate listings on my MLS. I skipped over that. That was in my market research, and we talk about it in the course. Like I found a way to kind of back test it, and 77% of estate listings in my market had expired I mean, they may have had offers, but they expired out and weren't relisted. So I saw a huge disservice being deployed to these folks. And I'm like, well, I have to make this call, because if I don't, they're going to be stuck with one of those other Mo's, and they're going to waste 6 to 12 months of their time, with an agent who's not going to get it done.
My business, the other end, they're going to get it done. They're going to take the estate of this poor guy who passed, who served his country, put his life savings into a home for his family's wealth, and squander it on the cheap. And I see that happening all the time. And I
Yeah.
have a listing right now where they were in escrow for 450 on a property that's worth, maybe it's not worth 650. We have it listed now. We'll just bring it to market next weekend. But maybe it's worth 600. It's certainly worth 550. I have multiple offers already at 550. So it's $100,000 more we're going to bring to the family. And this widow is in a nursing home. Like this is the difference between getting whatever the government care is and the stepped up, quality medical care for her life. Of course, her husband would want her to have the benefit of the property, not given to some investor on the cheap because she doesn't, she trusted somebody she shouldn't trust. So,
Yep.
so
And guys, I want to say, like, if anyone here is predominantly investor or anyone listening, like I'm a real estate investor. I love buying stuff at deep discounts. This afternoon, I'm going to tear into a house that I bought in October, and it's been sitting because my father passed shortly after. So I'm getting ready to tear into that house. Its replacement cost on the asset's probably $170,000. I paid 25 for it. The freaking roof is worth $25,000 on this house. So it's not that I don't buy them at deep discounts. It's that I let the seller's needs dictate the strategy I use. I didn't go, I would have, I told them, I'm like, you can sell this to somebody from Washington, DC. We'll come in here and pay $100,000 for this. And she wrapped me in a hug and started crying. And she's like, but they're not you, and I want you to have it. And I'm like, well, I have a $75,000 rehab cost. I want to be in it for 100 all in. I can give you 25. And we signed it on the truck hood. So it's not that I've bought these as low as like 14, 15 cents on the dollar, because it was what was best for the family. They wanted to give up the equity because they had emotionally disconnected from it. The money didn't matter as much as just ending the bullshit. And so when you get infighting in the family, you will have opportunity to buy these at less than 20 cents on the dollar, because the emotional pain has just compounded over time and they just want it out of their life. So not to say, I mean, we all like to be altruistic and do the right thing, but sometimes the right thing is to get your damn checkbook out and just take it to closing in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, yeah. It's best for them in that case. So, how did you then go from doing this business to then going into coaching, training, selling data, and all that?
So we started a company. Jim Sullivan was a good friend, a previous client from the resort world. And he started, he was teaching me short sales and I was teaching him probate, and we were testing it together, or we were both learning probate together. And we said, there's how many of these are there? And there's roughly 1.3 million deaths per year. And the majority of those, at least over half, are probated. So we looked at it and we're like, wow, there's no real consistent lead source with like really good data that has phone numbers and everything. So we built a company called All the Leads, where we actually built an army of physical researchers who went into courthouses nationwide, would gather the data, bring it back. We put it through a proprietary system where we would skip trace it, and then we provided it in a CRM with marketing automation. And in building that company, what I realized is if you give 100 real estate professionals access to all of the probate leads in a courthouse, usually about 3 of them will get a result like Bill Gross. So if you like most people, you give them the list, they overwhelm themselves or they get intimidated, they just never take action on it. So we had an incredibly high churn rate. And I saw Probate Mastery was a course that was really born out of necessity. I saw all the blind spots people had, and they weren't filling them on their own. They weren't self-educating. There's close to 900 hours of me on YouTube talking about all this, but it's scattered out in their big, long conversations, and it just, people weren't getting the value. So Probate Mastery, I started in 2014, I think, at one of those years. But I started it shortly after we got all the leads going, because the people who were purchasing the leads weren't getting a return on investment. And that bothers me. I don't want to be a company that sells stuff. Like, I want to be a company that provides value. And so it was born for that reason. And what we found is the average student, or the average customer who was purchasing leads, if they went through the Probate Mastery course, they stayed with it 4 times longer on average than anyone else who was a customer. And what I'm most proud of is people like Bill Gross and John Fraker and Bill Bird up in Northern California, and David Pinnell in Texas. I mean, those guys that took it seriously, really listened, and went and put it into action immediately. Pretty much everyone who does that hits 6 figures, but I'm really proud of the guys that have gotten into 7 figures in 1 year, just doing this one thing, with this one simple concept. They can go do 7 figures of business. And it's happened in Midtown Manhattan and Dallas, Fort Worth, and Marin County, California, like little rural markets, LA, San Francisco, Maricopa, like around Phoenix. So I have guys that are in the Midwest and markets with 35 leads a month. Roger Lisi, you see him all the time, Bill. I mean, Roger's doing, off of 35 leads, he can do 3 to 5 closings a month consistently for 5 years running. And it's because he really focuses on reaching each of the families, crafting a valuable offer for them. And he gets tons of referrals from that too. So it doesn't matter if it's rural, if it's urban, it just works. Like if your heart's in it and you're doing it for the right reasons, if you have a servant's mindset, this is the easiest real estate business you ever build.
Well, it works if you work it. And I think that's the thing that attracted me to your system. I've said this a lot of times, that you give away more coaching for free than anybody sells. And what attracted me was not just the class or the concept of probate, but kind of the ecosystem, that I can come on when needed some encouragement. There are other people I've met that I've masterminded with and talked to. That's why I did my weekly call. To be honest, my original thinking was I needed a place to go where people were practitioners would share ideas. I didn't want to sell the product because I'm not in the business, but I wanted to talk to another probate guy in another county. How do you fix this? How do you solve that? How do you deal with that? And so I created that, and I do that every week, probateweekly.com. to the public, and I do it inside EXP. Same thing. I like meeting other EXP agents that do probate around the country. We share ideas and share vendors, and it gives me a chance to bring you in. So congratulations on building the Probate Mastery platform. So now when people say to you, where should I get the data? Because I don't believe at this time you're selling data. What's your answer there? Where should somebody who wants to start? I always say, start with a coaching, and then the data will kind of figure itself out for you. How do you answer that question?
So anywhere but getting it yourself. Like I don't condone anybody ever going to the courthouse and doing it, because I mean, if you're on a call like this, I'm assuming you see yourself as a six-figure earner or higher. And if you're a six-figure earner, you have no damn business being a court researcher. There's just lots of alternatives so you can stay focused on dollar productive activities. So for me, like, I do agree that, and all the people, so 81% of customers that came through all the leads would take Probate Mastery before they bought leads.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just an observation. It wasn't the goal. It's just how it naturally happened. So most people find it more, the path, the common path to success seems to be educate yourself, build confidence, get clear on your offer, then incur the cost of leads and marketing.
Yeah.
The people that I see that buy leads and marketing, we'll just use David Pinnell. We'll pick on him. So for 8 months, he bought leads and he's like, I don't need your training. I know I've been in real estate. And for 8 months, he made $0. He spent money on marketing. He was doing all this stuff his way. And there's interviews of me and David on YouTube, a couple of different ones. But
I interviewed him on my YouTube channel too. He was great.
yeah, 8 months in, he took Probate Mastery, and he's like, "Holy crap! Why didn't I do this before?" And so that was in February. We did that first video in July, and he had 27 closings for, I think, right at 600,000 in commission and revenue. Excuse me. That year he finished up around like 975 in revenue off of this one strategy. And then every year thereafter, he's been well into seven figures. I think he was at like 1.3 or 1.4 last year. He's doing one thing. And since then, a lot like you, Bill, he's been able to go from working 7 days a week with a team of 15, 16 people. He let his brokerage, he let the building lease go. He let the ISA team go. He let the admins go. And he and his wife run a 7-figure real estate company. They work about probably 15 hours a week, maybe 20 hours a week. So like, he was one of those, that's a good example of that. He had 0 results when he was banging his head against the wall, just trying it the approach that worked well with FSBOs and expireds, what wasn't working for him in probate. But as soon as he changed his approach, he got a completely different result. So I think educating yourself, getting confident, and getting clear on your offer is the best first step. When it comes time to get data, depends on the market you're in. And some, it's becoming more prevalent. And about, let's just say, maybe 15% of markets now, you can gather the data online. But you're going to get the petitioner's name, the docket number, the attorney's name, and then you have to go skip trace and get phone numbers. And I actually have a spreadsheet that I made for a coaching student about just how much money you lose if you do all that on your own. So I would recommend to find a vendor. I sold my shares in all the leads because I wanted to go a different direction with my lifestyle and career. And I pretty much just want to live in national parks and be outside. And so I wasn't looking to be behind a desk all the time anymore. But I still believe the system we built at all the leads, because of the marketing automation more than anything, the list management aspect of this is what will eat you alive. If you're not a strong operations person, if like keeping track of who you have spoken to, who you haven't, who you mailed last month, and who you should mail this next month, and then who you called, who you haven't, and who you should and shouldn't call. That's all built into all the leads system for free. It's part of every subscription. So I still think that what we built is the best in the country. It's not the cheapest place to get data, and there are places where you can get it sometimes on a daily basis. We typically get it on a bi-weekly or a monthly basis. But I still think it's the best quality data in the country as far as phone numbers goes. And I think it's in the best system. And all the letters that I wrote back in 2011, 12, 13, 14, I personally spent over $50,000 in training myself on copywriting and testing mail campaigns. So the letters that they're sending are proven. I proved them out with my dollars as we were building the company. So they have letter templates that you can, set up in an online editor, and literally in 30 minutes, you could go from never having heard of it to getting signed up, getting your letters set up, and have full marketing automation for 12 months. And you can do it all in about 30 minutes. And so for the system reason, I still think All the Leads is the best lead provider because of what they give away for free. And a lot of that was, I'm not going to take credit for everything, but that was that provide value first principle
Right.
that I spoke about earlier. We believe that we could take a commodity, a piece of public data, and we could wrap enough value in it that we would attract the right people as customers. And we did. We built a great company, and it still is. It was time for me to move on.
No, it is. And they had the weekly call-ins, which were really helpful. And now you have that through Probate Mastery. But back when you were running those, it was so helpful. I very rarely could go live because I was in court in the morning and I would hear it on replay for the most part. I remember one day I got out early and I rushed to the court cafeteria room so I can call in for once. It's like the first time I could ever call in because I was so busy. And I think that's one of the problems with this for me has been, I feel deficient in not being as good a supporter of yours as I should be on those calls because you made me so damn busy. It's hard in the mornings, especially. It's hard. I think my mornings is my prospecting time, so I got a bunch of leads and appointments and phone calls. So, one of the things that you talked about a couple weeks ago that for me is, I don't want to say a different path, but I would say my focus has been less on direct mail and direct calling of PRs, which I think is a piece of the puzzle. But for me, has always been about kind of the affiliate. When I was in your program, you talked about building your team. And what I saw right away was, well, prospecting a guy who, does junk outs or does firearms dealer or, any of the other vendors that I've needed in my business so far, that they also are people, they own businesses, they own homes, they know people who have homes to sell. And investors was a big piece of it for me. And so I found the building of the kind of network of support for my business to me as valuable as the cold calling or mailing to PRs. And I know in your call, I want to say a week or two ago, there was a real hot topic where you talked about how to build out. Can you talk a little bit about the process, how helping other people, with the idea of helping other people ends up helping you in your business? Can you chat about that just a little bit?
Sure. So what we teach is really a two-prong approach. Half of it is marketing. The other half is building a referral network. And that referral network can also be the vendor team that you use to delegate. As I told you, it's like my big mantra as a company for the company that owns this is Magnum Opus Project. And the mantra there is work less, earn more, do good. And that's really what we're trying to teach you how to work less, not more, how to earn more and net more from your revenues, and really just do good in your community and continue to earn that. It becomes a cycle if you get it right, like the business comes to you. So over time, I had a complete inbound strategy. I didn't actually sit down and bang the phones. I know that's what it takes to find early success. So that's how I coach. But I'm not going to lie, like I didn't make the calls. I didn't have to. I would send out 100 letters. I would get 2 listings or 2 acquisitions. And I would do that for 3 months, and then I'd move on to the next list. So I maintained a 6% close rate on every cold list I ever ran through and probate. And that was enough for me. I should have done more. I could have done more, but I liked riding my motorcycle. So while I was doing this, I was traveling 4 to 6 months a year while doing this. And I was all over the world. So building the vendor team will help you delegate most of that work. You can appear as, well, you actually are a vertically integrated solution for families going through this transition. So you have contractors, clean out crews, mortgage bankers, CPAs, registered investment advisors, social workers, firearms dealers, antique car buyers, you name it. You never stop building that list of people who you can bring in to add value.
Right.
In addition to that, you have probate attorneys who, most people don't realize this, are under an anti-solicitation law. They're not allowed to directly prospect those who have petitioned for probate. They're not allowed to directly prospect anyone who doesn't have an estate plan. So they rely on broadcast marketing like billboards, radio commercials, or throwing conventions at the cheap ass Holiday Inn around the corner from their office. And that's historically how these folks have had to build their business. And they're just like us. And if you're in brokerage and you don't have passive income, you're unemployed every morning, and you've got to get up, get on the phones, and go find a job for the day. And that's how most attorneys are too. They're literally unemployed every morning. They've got to go find the next person they can write a trust for, the next probate they can open. So understanding that, like, look at the like B2B value. So how can my small business provide value to your small business? So you approach the attorney with the exact same mindset as the prospect. How can I provide value first and earn value back in return? Well, one of the best ways there is to take a referral to the attorney. And it doesn't have to be a probate referral. Chances are, if they've petitioned, they've already chosen an attorney, but it can be a living trust referral. So look at the high net worth individuals in your network, take them to your attorney and say, hey, would you like an hour? What can I pay for an hour for you to sit down and do the right thing for your family? Perfect. And then you go to the attorney and say, hey, I'm looking to, to partner with the right estate planning attorney. I actually have one of my friends is considering a living trust, and I wanted to see if this, if I could have him stop by. So you walk in the door with value. You don't walk in the door asking for referrals. That's what everybody else is doing. Hey, I got cash. I'm gonna buy probate houses. I know you're a probate attorney. Send me those deals. They're not looking for that. In addition to that, you've got nursing home employees, social workers, anyone who would have senior moving companies, anyone who would have contact with families in that end of life phase, hospice workers. And a lot of these folks, like one of the members of our community and the Probate Mastery, I don't know if I'm blanking on his name right now, Bill, but he's a hospice worker. The way he found us is he watched so many families suffer through this and the hospice worker situation that he was compelled to go get his real estate license. And then he found us. And now, like, he's on every call, and he valid, like, he's like, yes, that's exactly. I've been watching. I wish I didn't would have. Why didn't I find you guys 6-7 years ago? Because he sat in frustration and watched families go through all these struggles we're talking about, but he wasn't qualified to do anything about it because he was a hospice worker. He wasn't a real estate professional. But now he's taken what he learned in those years of being a hospice worker. And now he's got a real estate license. He's built his team around him. So he's got anyone and everyone that can bring value. So as you build your referral network, anyone who's like him, he was sitting there knowing that these families needed assistance, but he didn't know a person he could send them to. So he watched them struggle through it and dump the asset for way less than it was worth just to get money to pay for healthcare usually. So anyone in the community that would be, working with individuals in the end of life phase, whether they're living or have just passed away, is a great person to have in your network. And as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned Roger Lisi. He's in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. And, he started doing this with his list of 35 leads, and he started focusing on the B2B relationships. I don't even, when I first met Roger, he was 62 or 63 and never made a prospecting call. He was terrified of the phones. Put him on the phones. He nailed a $7.1 million commercial listing in the first week. First round of prospecting, it was an out parcel, and I think Walmart bought it because he's in Fayetteville. And that changed everything for him. He's like, oh, I'm on the phones now. A $7 million listing will get you motivated. But Roger has really, really taken this part of it to heart. He's probably the student that I point to the most as like building out like a really like great referral network in a small community. He can average 3 to 5 deals a month. And it's because the attorneys know he'll get it done. They know he can be trusted as a fiduciary for the family and really a fiduciary for their firm. So they send him all their divorce listings. They send him all the probate listings. They pay him by the hour to testify in court as a probate expert. The local radio station has put him on every week. He has a weekly radio spot where he talks about this stuff. And it was all just what we're talking about here, just doing the right thing. So eventually you can phase out the marketing prong. I talked about two prongs. Eventually you can kind of let go of the marketing and the outbound. If you do this right, the business will come to you inbound, because if enough people understand your value statement, like what your offer is, they can't help but send people to you, because it's like, okay, I can not do anything, know that Chad's going to handle it all, and I still get paid for my part of it. Well, they're doing the same thing we are. We're delegating to people who are better qualified, and are, the work that they do with the family should be dollar productive, and the work we do should be. But none of us should be doing things that aren't dollar productive for our business.
I think there's two parts that you hit that are so important that people miss in this process. Is one, there's all these little vendors, but you could take any one and go deep and make a whole living on that one vendor. Now, I've done a lot with investors. That's been my focus, as well as probate attorneys. But I know a gal who all she does is hospice and senior care in that realm, because she met one lady who's a sales rep for a big facility, and that company had multiple locations, and I taught her how to call those companies and find the colleagues. And I said, and then second, how being an expert in probate, people are scared to be an expert, but the truth is half the referrals that come to me aren't probate. They just know I'm an expert in real estate and solving problems, and I'm
That's a
honest
really
and
good point.
hardworking. Half my business is probate, half is not. It cashes either way. It goes, EXP pays me either way. But the beauty is, because I'm an expert, they assume I can do the basics. And then they have another problem. They have this kind of a legal problem or that kind of a social problem that they want to know if I can help them with that. I think
So
that's kind of,
there's a paradox here in our industry, where when I first started going to trade shows, when we started taking all the leads on the road to build it out, the first time it ever really occurred to me, and I'm like, how the hell did I not think of this? Because for me, like, it was such a rewarding space. It built my reputation. But the knee-jerk reaction from the average agents at a real estate convention was, well, I don't want to be perceived as an ambulance chaser. That'll mess up my reputation.
right.
And the paradox there is what Bill just talked about. Like, people like Roger Lisi built their reputation on this. But like Bill did, I did. And there's one student in particular. This is probably the most extreme story I have of it, but she was called by a member of a lady in the neighborhood about listing her house. And she went over, and like, someone had told her, like, she's got she helps so many people. So she went over and she listed the house on that appointment. And as they were sitting there talking, they're just like, wow, whoever referred her was like, they were totally right. Like, you really get it. Like, you're amazing. And she's like, can you go across the street and talk to my neighbor? She's like, yeah, sure. She took 14 listings that day.
Oh, no.
The neighbor was in probate. She was not even focusing on, this is how she found probate. Like, she got 14 probate listings and then came looking for a lead source. But like, or no, that's not right. Maybe she got the first one off of marketing, but the other probate was old and wasn't on her list. So she took the probate listing, and then that person referred them to the neighbor across the street. Long and short of it, she ended up making about $500,000 that day. And it was because she had that reputation as being the problem solver, the helper. And she took a portfolio of homes in addition to the one she intended to go list that day. And there's tons of stories like that over the thousands of people I've helped into this. But a lot of, if you're concerned about the public perception of it, if you do it right, that public perception is only going to put wind in your sails. It's going to lift your business, and you'll have more inbound business, because people will perceive you as a problem solver, not an ambulance chaser.
Sorry, when I took Probate Mastery the first time, and it's on demand, so I've retaken it, as I can in the past, and in the middle of it right now. So I'm building my list, and I'm making a list of different people. One was an attorney, not a probate attorney. I called my friend who's a past client, who's an attorney, and asked for a referral to a probate attorney, which, by the way, the referral was a complete waste of time. But he said to me, I got this client, I have the civil matter where there's a problem with the lot line. Can you help her with that? And I said, yeah, of course. The answer is yes, of course I can help. And I call her on the phone, and it was a widow. Her husband had this 6-unit building, and there was a conflict between the wall with the neighbor and the city sided them. They paid, and she's describing. She said to me, can you come over and check it out? Now, it was a little towards the edge of my geography, so I drove there. I met this sweet widow. She'd been married for over 50 years. Can you imagine? The guy passes and leaves with this property. Instead of being a blessing, it's becoming a source of stress for her. We walk the property for half an hour. We get back to the front. And she just turns to me and says, you know what? Rather than help me with the title thing, can you just sell this for me?
Hmm.
That was my first listing presentation after your class. I said, sure. So I did it and we sold it. And a month or two go by and she had a proceeds check for about $500,000. And I wanted to deliver it to her at her house, old school style. And I go to her house, I remember on Friday afternoon with the closing package and the check. And she says to me, this is so great. She's crying. She said, I've always wanted to be with my sister in Arizona, but I didn't think I could afford it. She lived in a two-unit property. There was a little bit of a problem with a tenant in the other unit. He just turns to me and says, can you sell this? And so I sold like $1.3 million, I think, between the two properties. And my entire listing presentation was saying yes, because I took an attorney on my list, not a probate attorney for referral, but called him and just, added him to my list of vendors and got business. And neither was technically a probate. She had clear title, but they were like a probate deal. They required some special work. And so your teaching is right on this point. So we talked about probate mastery. I'm sorry.
I said, thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's just right on point. And it felt so good to do it. And I got paid. Nothing wrong with that part, but it felt so good.
So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit distracted. I want to give you guys a gift while I'm here. I have a handout that shows kind of the basic team. And this is all part of the course, but I figured I'll drop something here for you guys. I'm going to use a Dropbox link. I don't think I can attach to chat. But if you guys want, this will kind of help you see the members of mainly the vendor team, not the referral team. But that's something that may just help you. It's relative to what we've been talking about.
Nice. Thank you.
But yeah, imagine if you had that built out where you have 36 of these small business owners that see the value you can bring to their business, but also to their clientele, and they're out bird dogging for you every day. And you're someone who can make their life easier. Are you going to get referrals? Sure.
Yeah, we got this last week. The alumni of the program, Probate Mastery is your coaching program, and then you have I don't even know what it is, but like an alumni group Facebook thing, and then you have a weekly call. So Kat handed this out on the alumni group last week. This is a great handout, by the way. So thank you for offering that to our people. So Probate Mastery is describe the program a little bit, and I want to share. I believe rather than spending money on stuff or on systems, the number one place to invest money is yourself. You're the most valuable asset in your business. And I know you believe this because just today I got a list of books to read, which is what? Books to learn about how to build me and make me better, make me more effective as a businessman, right? So at the end of the day, the data, maybe you buy or you don't buy it, marketing letters, maybe you buy or you don't buy, fancy letters, postcards. There's a million ways to skin a cat, but it starts with you having the right mindset and you having the right technical knowledge to be effective. And so the Probate Mastery to me is the place to start to become the expert. And then I think the marketing will I don't want to say it takes care of itself, but it will come more naturally to you when you know where you're at and where you're supposed to come from. And I know I got a question about, is it applied nationally or is it just limited? Can you describe a little bit about the program and why, in my opinion, it is a national program. It is the ultimate national program as opposed to what other people see.
Sure. So I'll first say that Probate Mastery is, as you have heard in my story, what I learned is where I've found the least resistance and the highest reward is when you focus on people, understanding those people, understanding what motivates them, understanding what is currently challenging them, and then just crafting an offer that solves all their problems. And you're the perfect person for them. And mastery is no different. Like I have spent the last decade of my life helping thousands of people into this niche and trying to teach them to build a business that was as lucrative and easy and fun as mine was. In doing that, I've realized that, like a lot of people come into training thinking they're going to learn about all the legalities of probate and all the minutia. The probate code's there. You can go read it. I'm not going to teach you about probate law. I'm going to teach you I'm going to teach you about the broad, the kind of the macro probate law that you need just to understand, to be empathetic to their position. and to be compliant and to be valuable to the attorney. Beyond that, you don't need to know all this stuff. It's good. Like in the beginning, you don't need to. Eventually, I love that Bill Gross goes to court and he knows the attorneys and the judges. Like eventually you'll get there. But what you need to focus on first is what I teach in the course. So session 1 is all about understanding probate. What is it? How many people are going through it nationally? How does this apply? And what does the process look like? What can you expect? So we go through demographics, we go through a little bit of legal, just enough to understand it. Session 2 is where we really get into the valuable content, like what's most valuable. Session 1 should be like enough that it'll show you why this is an opportunity and why it's a problem for the families. Session 2 is where you craft your specific offer. So we look at all the things that can be done. I have probably, I would say, 24 strategies that I use to buy or list houses just to get rid to move real estate. And I'll show you all of them. I show you from the furthest end of the investor spectrum to the most conventional deal I've ever done. We talk a lot about creative financing and really outside of the box solutions to help these families meet their goals. The goal is to come out of session 2 with a written document that you can over time work on. Session 3 is all about people and a conversation. We literally spend 5.5 hours breaking apart a 15-minute conversation because I'm a student of psychology. I graduated with honors from law enforcement and psychology. I've been in sales. I've managed restaurants. I really just I love what, like, understanding what makes people tick, what motivates them, what limits them, and removing those limitations. And I find it, it's just a game that I play. Like, if I can help you get out of your own damn way and you benefit more than me, I'm going to pour myself into you. So a lot of that is what just those life lessons that I've brought back to real estate prospecting calls. So we'll break apart what I call a probate USP, or your unique selling proposition.
Right.
So all of your competitors are calling saying, "Hi, my name's Chad with ABC Real Estate, and I see that you're the executor of an estate at 123 Walnut Street, and I would like to come by and talk to you about what that home is worth," or whatever kind of canned bullshit they can come up with. When the reality is, you approach them as, "Hey, my name's Chad. I've got a team of people here locally that help families going through probate. And because of that, we go to the courthouse and meet with the clerk once a month. And you're one of the folks," she said, "that we could probably benefit from us reaching out." So I wanted to introduce the service, kind of help you understand what your position is and see if there's any way we might help. What's the one thing that's bothering you guys, or you could use some help with right now? So that's just one little thing. And, the response that you get on a prospecting call when you speak like that versus like what old school sales coaches have taught us for years, it's just night and day result. The result is completely different. So we spend hours just breaking apart each layer of this conversation. Why is it in this order? Why do we use this language? Why the hell do we even need this information? Because I teach you to provide options. I don't want you to, like, my whole goal is to teach you to monetize every real estate conversation. So I have a mind map that I won't distract myself here, but like, I literally have a way to monetize everyone who owns a piece of real estate that will answer the phone call. I can monetize it. And I try to teach that in the probate space. So over the course of it, it's about 16 hours of content, but it's very people focused content. Sometimes you're the person in focus. Other times the prospect or the consumer, the family, is the person in focus. Other times it's the attorney. We also teach you in session 2 how to build your referral network. So it's not a course about the logistics and operations of probate and what some people, expect that. It's about the part of probate that matters, the people and the emotional aspects of it. So we teach you how to progress through a very emotional time while using a logical brain, like using a logical outline in your head, but using emotional language to get through that logical outline and help the families come to their own conclusions. Not a very short summary, but that's about the best I can summarize it.
Well, another thing that's changed now from when I first did it was it was 15 hours. It was 3 days, 5 hours. Well, that's tough to do if you have any business at all. When I started, I had no business, so I was able to do it, and I just ate it up, really deeply. You allowed us to retake it. I could never really get on it again because the phone would ring and I had stuff to do. The nice about this is it's on demand, and so going through it now, I could start, stop, start, stop. Cindy Lucar put in here that she loved it. She had taken the program
Yeah.
live, but
Hey,
life got
Cindy.
in the way. Life got in the way, right? That's why the beauty of an on-demand program, if you're going to do it. But it's 15 hours versus I've been to other programs that are 2 or 3 hours because they want to do it all at once, and they give you a fancy certificate, and they're going to tell you the shortcuts and the easy ways. Well, I will tell you this: the shortcut and the easy way, in my experience, is doing the hard work daily, and that's what Chad's really teaching us. So. And I put an affiliate link if you want to join in. Love to have you. Love to have you on the Probate Mastery calls that Chad does every
Tuesdays
noon,
at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific.
Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon here, which is usually when I would like to go to swim practice because I've
And that's
made enough
and
money
I
now.
I've gotten down the rabbit hole. So the other part of this, guys, what I learned is if I teach somebody a class, there'll be a few out of every class that'll really excel. But if I provide a community along with that, then everybody else, the peers, hold them accountable as much as I do. So we've built a community. There's two communities we have. One is only for CPEs. That's called Probate Mastery Alumni. But the public community where we can kind of all be in there, you've got attorneys, you have appraisers, real estate agents, real estate investors. That's called Estate Professionals Mastermind. And I think we've got a couple thousand people in that community now. It's only about 9 or 10 months old. But you can find us, like we archive the calls, only our live calls. Live coaching is only available to students or graduates. But we'll season those for, I think, 48 hours, and then Kat releases them into a state professional mastermind. And there's also a podcast. You can go to Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and download or subscribe to a state professional mastermind podcast. And you can hear the culture. You can hear how we treat our students. That basically the same way I'm proposing you treat your prospects is how I try to treat each of our students.
Mm. And a couple questions in the chat box is from Jacqueline. Can you give us a time frame of transactions of this type? And I'll say this: probates can take a long time, but if you follow the system, like I got those 2 listings within weeks. I took the class, called the attorney, went saw the lady, listed the next day. That's probably a week or so after taking it the first one. If you work it, there's no reason why it doesn't have to go through a whole probate process. This is about the relationships, not the probate, right?
Yep. So I would say that, and I've marketed to probably at least 15 different lists, like distressed lists. Like I've done NOD, pre-foreclosure, foreclosure, the ones I mentioned earlier, code violation, fire, eviction, probate, absentee, vacant, like, I mean, you name it. This list has the shortest cash conversion cycle of any I've ever marketed to. It depends on when you like, because a lot of people think, well, the folks who just filed probate, they might not be ready for 2 or 3 months, but 1.3 million people a year are filing probate. So you can go back in time and get the people who filed probate 3 months ago and market to that list. So the I don't try. I typically don't try to set the expectation that you'll get paid in the first 30 days because I don't want people to give up. Sometimes it takes 6 months to hit momentum, and when you do, it just continues to build. But your cash conversion cycle is inside of 90 days for sure. A lot of folks get paid in the first month, and a lot of folks by the time they hit 3 months, they're kind of at that run rate of 2 to 3% conversion on a cold list. So for every 100 leads, you could expect 2 to 3 closings. It is state dependent. Like if you're in California, even if the funeral was yesterday and they filed probate today and they got the letters tomorrow, put the house on the market, you're still at the mercy of the court in California, unless you have a savvy attorney who petitioned for full authority. And we won't get into too many specifics, but in most cases, you can sell a home. A very common misconception is a home cannot be sold until probate is closed, and probate takes a year or longer. And it's just, neither of those things are true. It's just a common perception. And that's where, I talked earlier about the other agent that might end up listing that house if you don't do your prospecting. Those are the things. There's all kinds of these common misconceptions that have led to real estate, like the service that's being provided to these families. None of it's rooted in truth. It's all based in just perception, and their perception's wrong. So you can close them quickly. You can close them inside of probate. In a lot of states, you can close them without court approval. And it's way easier than conventional listings where someone's like, oh, what's my home worth? And then you kiss their butt for 9 months and try to be one of 6 agents they interview and finally get the house on the market at a price that's 15% overpriced. You don't deal with any of that stuff in probate. They trust your advice. They see you as a professional advisor. When you say, here's the price, they say, thank God, how fast can you get it done? When you say the date, they say, all right, let's do it. I've never had to go up against competition. I've never had to negotiate my damn commission. I've never had to justify my pricing. These people see you as a trusted advisor, not as some realtor. We've got an unfortunately, our peers have given a lot of us we have to overcome a preconceived reputation as realtors because of how many people are out there that really shouldn't be in the industry. And in probate, it's really different because you reach them from the beginning without having that title of, hey, I'm Chad from ABC Realty. They see you as Chad and they don't prejudge you as they would if they were lining up 6 realtors to interview. So that's kind of my take on it. You can get paid in the first 30 days. You can get paid faster and do a hell of a lot less work than you can really with any other list I've ever focused on.
And I would add 2 things if I could. One is that as you learn probate, you also can work on how to get probate properties and bring them to investors, and that will shorten down the time period.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things I did at court was I helped investors buy properties, and those closed within 30 days of the court hearing. And that shortens down the process from listing a property and all that. And then second, I would say that, again, the focus here is the relationships, not just the probate. All real estate, on average, is about 2-year germination period, on average. Boomtown and KV Core, when they run their statistics, they'll tell you average lead to closing average is 2 years.
Yeah,
so
that's
just know
absurd.
that's, yeah.
Compared to this, there's no way anyone who's diligent, if you jump into this for the right reasons and you're diligent,
Yeah.
you can't get outside of 6 months without making good money.
Yeah.
Now you can certainly not make money, but not by being diligent. Like if you're doing the right things in the right order, this works. And it works. The toughest market for anyone who's looking for encouragement. The toughest market I've ever coached in, I've never been skunked. So far, I've never found a county. There's 3,149 counties in the United States. So far, I've never found one that this doesn't work in. Over thousands and thousands of people. The toughest challenge I've ever had is Colorado Springs and Denver and like that whole eastern side of Colorado, because they don't record the probate data. They have 2 sets of records. One set is when the petition is filed. The other is when probate is closed. The public access is only to the probate that's closed. But even in that, like the ones that have already been in the probate process for 6 to 9 months, they've already settled the estate. There's enough business in the inherited side of it. Like we go ahead and gather that data. And Bill, if you were on the call last Tuesday, Dave Gwynn was on there. Dave Gwynn is in Colorado and Florida. He's never even been to his market in Florida. He virtually wholesales, but he's in that Denver market. And he's one of the people that I'm like, man, if you stick with me and you keep telling me what's not working, we will find what works. And we did. And he's making a 7-figure income running 2 different markets. He's running in the Denver, Colorado Springs region, and then in the Space Coast of Florida. So like even in the toughest markets in the country, within 6 months, you can have this off the ground running as one of the main pillars of your business.
Yeah. And that answers your question too, Nicole. I know that she's in Vegas and there's some agents that do probate, but again, they're not you. And if you present yourself to help people and families and you do what it takes to help them, you will make more money than you know what to do with. That's been my experience. Well, Chad, we've gone a little long. I could talk to you for hours about this. I have talked to you with you for hours on your coaching. So it's always a pleasure. Probate Mastery is the program. If you're interested, there's a link there if you want to sign up for the coaching program. Love to have you. It supports my business. If you would sign up through that link, that'd be great. And I'm on that pretty regularly as well. I also host this in the EXP Workplace every week, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And I also host Probate Weekly. Thursday is 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And I'm on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/BillGrossEXP and see my past episodes, including this one and such. So, Chad, thank you so much for all you've done for me personally, for the business, for the industry, and thank you for your time today with all my colleagues at EXP.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to meet all you guys. Anything
All
I
right,
can
thanks.
do, please let me know.
Thanks again so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All the best. Okay, there you go. That's a wrap.